he felt this massive euphoria that he'd caught the rabbit. He was very excited. He was so happy. He was hugging his wife and hugging us and he got really excited about it. And that guy had a female Harris hawk, and he flew his female Harris hawk for years. He basically took it up to Scotland. He's up there. He moved up to Scotland. He catches crows with this female Harris hawk. It's an absolutely awesome female Harris hawk. But he said that afterwards when he's seen us, he said that, you created a monster. He said, like, I just love it. I love the whole idea of it and the excitement and the primeval thing that it's brought out in me.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Told podcast, and what is now episode 16 of our series featuring Falconers from the UK. This is our second to last episode of this series, and I really hope that you all have gotten a lot out of the series and enjoyed it. And of course, it wouldn't have been possible without the help of two Falconers from the UK, being Simon Tyers and Neil Davies. If you haven't gotten a chance to yet, you definitely need to head to thespecialistfalcon.com and get your copy of Simon's book, The Specialist Falcon. And also, if you haven't yet, at least head to pursuitfalconry.co.uk and check out Neil's Pursuit Falconry and Conservation magazine. There's lots of great information in every new issue, and I highly recommend that you check it out and subscribe. And as I just mentioned, these are our last two episodes of our UK series, and these last two episodes had to be recorded remotely due to some different travel and logistical constraints that we ran into while I was over there in the UK. And yeah, unfortunately, there's just sometimes not enough time to get everything in that you want to, but fortunately, I was able to reconnect with Jose and Charlotte recently, since I wasn't able to at the game fair, and bring you all this conversation about some of their experiences with hunting, as well as their CJ's Bird of Prey exhibition and education business, and some of the different experiences they've had with that. So just an FYI also, I did run into a little bit more lag and delay issues this episode than I did with some of the other remote ones that I've recorded. I've done my best to clean them up as best as I can, but regardless, I hope that you all enjoy some of the different perspectives that might come from this episode and the conversation in general. So with that, I give you all Jose and Charlotte Souto. Here we go. Well, I'm glad you guys made it home okay. We're going. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long drive from London, and then Charlotte picks me up at the station. But I mean, it's we got there in the end. That's all right.
That's good. That's good. So I know when I was with Simon, he said that you guys have been having like a huge issue with your rail systems up there and stuff, with like the government trying to force through all kinds of new new tracks and stuff in different areas, and just kind of destroying everything. So I mean, has that been affecting you guys with any of your hunting areas or anything, or?
Not personally.
No, I mean, it affects me going to work. So basically, I've had a lot of days where I've been working from home, because whether the trains are on strike or whether the tubes are on strike, and sometimes both of them are on strike, I can't get to work. I mean, it took me, it's 100 miles to London, and it takes 45 minutes on a train. And then once you get there, then you've got a sort of 15-minute tube ride. But that 15-minute tube ride is right across London Underground. And if you go by, I mean, when there was a tube strike, I tried to get a bus, and it took me 4.5 hours to get to work. And it's less than 6 miles, 6 or 7 miles, something like that. Yeah, it's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And on the way home, it was even worse, because on the way home, you just couldn't get a bus. So basically, it was just like sort of 6 hours from work to home.
And you
Isn't the joys of working at home?
I'm sure. Yeah, Charlotte, I don't think you got the same problems, right?
No. It's called fall down the stairs and walk out the back door.
Yeah. Well, that's sounds like that's a much better route to go.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you guys, I mean, like Jose, then do you not, I mean, have you not ever entertained the thought of just would just driving like cut down any of that time at all?
No. That's even worse.
That's even worse.
The drive from here to London is not too bad. It's when you get to London, the 7 miles basically from the outside of London to the inside of London can take you twice as long as getting from here to London. London traffic's terrible. It's really, really bad, really bad. I mean, you just forget taking your car into London. It's absolutely ridiculous. I won't bother.
Yeah, that gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Yeah, and me.
Jeez. Yeah. Well, anyway, whatever. I'm glad you made it back. Yeah. We'll. Yeah. Hopefully, you will. I don't know. Find something down the road that maybe cook a little closer to home, or chef a little closer to home.
I'm happy that he does it. I'm happy. Works well between us.
Well, recently my job's taken a turn, and basically I work in London 3 days a week, and I work from home. I'm office based at home 2 days a week, so that gives me a little bit more time to be at home, and actually gives me a bit more time with the birds as well. So, which is great.
Sounds like my wife talking, basically. Yeah, I mean, I'm still doing the commuting and the contract work and stuff out of town a few days a week, and yeah, I mean, it kind of keeps us from killing each other too. So
pre-COVID, he'd go on a Monday, come on a Friday, and COVID, 5 days, 7 days a week at home was just something that we had to both make a conscious effort to try and deal with each other.
Yeah, whenever you have to really start going out of your way to try, really, really try to be nice to each other, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. No, I get it.
Particularly when it's Jose's hobby and my life with the birds. That also puts a lot of pressure on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of pressure.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So remind me again, how many birds do you guys have at home right now?
So it's a little bit quieter now because obviously it's not the breeding season, but probably
62.
62, something like that.
62.
That's including our breeding aviary. So we've got 3 pairs of peregrines, 2 pairs of aplomados, 1 pair of Harrisauks, which we breed,
and a partridge.
and then we've got it's sort of weird the way it works because Charlotte's got like 2 teams, and then we've got the hunting team. So the 2 teams, you want to tell them about?
Yeah, we've got the display team that go out and do all the country fairs and things, and then we have an experience day, which is our hands-on team. The hands-on team tend to be slightly like the Kestrels, the Barn Owls, and the Harrises, where obviously your display teams, you need your Falcons for small shows and some Falcons for the bigger shows. And then obviously we've got a new eagle at the moment as well, a new baby Chilean Blue, who's just an absolute dream. If they were more financially available, I'd say it was a beginner's bird.
It's been
so easy.
It has been the easiest bird we've ever trained. It's
By
just
far.
it's just like someone gave it the manual of falconry and read it and it knows what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been so easy. I cannot say how easy this bird has been. We've both flown other ones before. When I flew a female years ago, a young female, and an adult male here for many years. We've flown him, and
6.
And he was great, but he became broody and aggressive as he got older, and so he went into a breeding project, and that's why we've got this bird now. So yeah, and then between the 2 birds as well, between the 2 teams that we've got, there are birds that interchange between them, and then also there are birds that if there's something particular that if we do something for television
TV
or videos or something like that, something particular, then we normally there's birds that we can use for that. And then also we've got the hunting team. We've got 2 peregrines, a Goshawk, and we've got a Harrisauk that basically are on the hunting team.
Mm-hmm. Well, why do you think that particular bird then is like the easiest you've ever tried? You think it's just that bird, or do you think there's something about that particular species? Or
Well, a lot of people say it about the species. I'd never flown a youngster, so I couldn't be certain of it.
I think it's the individual bird, because I flew a youngster female, and maybe the female's a little bit more aggressive, and she was more aggressive than this male. This male is just a pussycat. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a parent reared bird. It's not an imprint. So.
Yeah. He hoods well. He circles well. It's obviously the wrong time of year for thermalin, but he'll still go off in the strong winds or even no wind, and he'll still pump round and do a nice couple of circuits round and to the fist. And he's very young. He's still young.
And we used to have a bird at the shows where there's a do you know what helter skelter is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you. So basically, there's this helter skelter that goes to a lot of the shows, and it's quite a big one, and it's normally parked outside the arena. And we used to have an eagle that we used to go right to the top of the helter skelter,
hood him, and then climb it,
and then Charlotte would call it into the arena. So this eagle would thermal into the arena, flying over the top of everybody. It was fantastic. It looked brilliant. And the guys, the helter skelter guys, loved it because everybody was looking at their things. Oh, I've got to go and do that later. And that worked really well. And this bird is going to be one of those birds where we can do that with it, and it's going to want to do that, and it's going to thermal in really nicely. So
nice. Well, I mean, I know whenever we did our it's almost already been a year ago. Whenever we did that,
yeah.
It's kind of funny to think about that. But I know whenever we talked during that episode last, we kind of touched on, you guys's like business and all the other stuff that you do along with your falconry. But now that we have you both on, just go ahead and talk a little bit more in depth about, the business and give people more of a background on it real quick.
Okay. Well, CJ's Birds of Prey started now 15 years this season coming. We started, I was working for Jemima Parry Jones at the time, and she was leaving to come over to the States, of which she did. And she had some birds that she couldn't take that were confiscated birds in this country for one reason or another. She couldn't take them with her because they couldn't leave the country, and she kindly offered them to me. And at the time, big discussions between myself and my father, and we set up the business. It grew and grew, and as is with anything in falconry, it's an obsession, an addiction, and everything else in life that follows with it. And then you become hoarders of birds. Some of the team here that are retired in our eyes, that are in their 20s now. I've got a couple of owls that are in their 20s, and they started with me those years back. And it's gone on from there, from strength to strength, until my father left the team 3 years ago.
Yeah, he retired.
He retired, has moved over to where my sister lives now, and I took it on myself, still with the support of the family when you need it, thank goodness. And yeah, it's just gone from strength to strength. But we travel the length and breadth of the country in all directions. I know nothing compared to the States, but yeah, we can go top to bottom within 7 or 8 hours, unless you're hitting London, of course, and then that's just
all bets are off.
Yeah,
it's anyone. Yes.
Yeah. No.
I mean, Charlotte and I met when we, I was, we've been friends for years, and one day a show at basically a falconry fair in London. Well, that was not London. It was Shropshire. She lost one of her peregrines. The peregrine basically was spooked and it went off, and there was a few guys that had gone out to try and find it, and I went out looking for it as well. It's
the worst place to lose a bird because everybody's trying to sell telemetry, everybody, so they've all got their tags on in the arena, and your bird's gone the opposite way, and you keep coming back to the main arena, which was our biggest problem at the time. He was a young bird. It was his first ever show. I shouldn't have done it. It's one of those hindsight things. Hundreds and hundreds of falconers around the outside of the arena, and it clears off and flies through a deer fence just to make your breath go.
So I found him, and then
24 hours later.
Yeah, I found him 24 hours later, and then he spooked when I went to try and get him because this bird was very one person, like Charlotte, nobody else. Even in years later, and we started going out and everything, and we got married, it still didn't like me. And then one of the other guys basically got it the other side of the hill. So anyway, all of us had helped and gone out. And John, Charlotte's dad, was chairman of the Central Falconry Club, and I was a regional officer for the British Falcon Association, which was another big club. And so we both sort of had bits and pieces to do with the Hawk Board here in the UK and everything, and we knew pretty much everybody. And so their club became an associate member of our club, and we had a piece of land up in Derbyshire. And Charlotte and her dad basically came up hunting to Derbyshire. We'd always known each other, and we'd always had other partners, and it just happened then that we didn't have other partners, and it went from there, and that was it. So basically, and we've been together ever since. So
15 years and counting. You get less than murder.
Yeah. It was just year 16 for my wife and I, so I understand. Yeah, no, I totally get it. But no, that's so. I mean, how many people do you have helping manage your teams then right now? How many people do you have currently working for you, Falconer wise?
Working for me, I have Sophie, and then we have an incredibly loyal, strong team of volunteers. We have volunteers that just come round to the shows for us. Then we've got guys that can just do a Thursday afternoon, and he comes like clockwork. And he's absolutely great. He does one particular job. He's awesome at it. He comes in, he does it, and he clears off again. And that's just amazing. And then we've got a guy particularly that comes on days when I'm away at shows. He comes at weekends and helps Jose out. He does have an interest in birds very much. But he's just got a massive heart, and he just loves to be around them. But he's very handy for us.
The thing is, with the guys that basically the volunteer here, I mean, I don't know how it is in America. I know you've spoken to some of the other guys that have got falconry centres, and they've got volunteers as well. And a lot of people have a lot of interest in birds of prey, but they don't have the time to have one. You know, the time or just the being able to have one at home. They just can't have one. So these guys basically come here. They spend time with us. They're like part of the family. I mean, you know, even Sophie, Charlotte's employee, full-time employee, she's like part of the family, and it's a family effort. You know, it's a family team. It's a family business. We all sort of work together. You know, the training of the birds. Sophie's got her set of birds which she looks after. Charlotte basically has sort of mainly the Falcons, the Eagles, and then we sort of share the Falcons and Eagles basically of the training and what we're doing. So if there's something particular that we're trying to achieve with a certain bird, we might try a different training technique or something new, you know, to basically, because we're looking for it to do something new in the shows. But all these guys, you know, love it. You know, once a year we basically get everybody together. You know, quite often they'll stay for dinner, you know, and things like that. So, and then, it's a great bunch of people. But Sophie is our main employee, and then on top of that, outside when we go to the shows, you've got Ches and Damien and Chris, basically, who are all falconers. They're all basically guys that have we've taught falconry over the years, and then they've got their own birds, but birds that we bred. And they hunt with those birds, and they come to the shows to help out. They know the score, you know, they know the background of the birds, they know how to talk to people and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's how it works. And I'm lucky. Well, I'm lucky or unlucky, if you like. During the summer months when Charlotte has most of her work, I'm here looking after the fort, and basically if we've got babies or if we've got youngsters, and if we have to double up on a show, we can double up on a show. I can go and sort of help out doing stuff like that. Although my background isn't shows; it's mainly hunting birds, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, how many shows do you guys run on average per week, or is it just kind of hit and miss?
I would say starting from Easter weekend until pretty much the end of September, we're out every weekend. And then there's not a huge amount of weekday shows in this country, but we are definitely picking up more. And then you've got the schools, particularly before the summer holidays kick in. We'll be doing schools 5 days a week then, and also the film work. You can do film work for 3 days, or one we did a couple of years back. It was pretty much twice every month for a whole year. And in the peak of the summer, it was near on every week. We were doing that filming. It was a year life in an orchard.
Year of the life of an orchard or something. Yeah. It was for a Japanese TV channel.
And they wanted some little owls filming, which happened to be on my dining room table, not in an orchard at all.
So basically, you've got to imagine this setup. There was a log, and this log had been chopped out of a tree and hollowed out. And they'd strapped this gear to the top of it and a camera to the top of it. And these little owls, baby little owls, they'd put them in there, and then they'd film them waddling around. We'd all have to keep quiet while they filmed them. And one of the problems that they had when they first got the log in here, the log was very cold and it was damp. And you kept putting little owls in, and sort of like any owls, they just hunched up and went to sleep. because it was cold. So in the end, we had to get a hairdryer and warm up the log and then put them in. And then they, move around and chatter around to others. And then we had a really funny thing when Charlotte had taught them to fly, and they were all flying. So there was 3 of them. It was like 3 wise monkeys when you put them in a tree. One would bob up and down, the other one they go left and right, and the other one would just sit there staring at you. And Charlotte had to teach them to eat beetles, didn't you? So
they wanted them to eat a stag beetle. And okay, little owls are little, bit like your burrowing owls in the States, with to compare it in size. Bar shorter legs is about the only difference really between them. Except for yours seem to be a little bit calmer than ours. Ours tend to go a little bit psychiatric and demented in their second year and try to savage you more than anything else.
They got little man syndrome. These owls.
Yeah, definitely. But we were trying to get them to eat these stag beetles. So at home, I was feeding them crickets and worms, just trying to get them to eat non-chick. And they'd take the grubs, but they weren't interested in much else. And then we got on set in this orchard, and I'd let the 3 of them go and sit up in the tree. And then they got the biggest stag beetle you've ever seen in your life, and then they released it onto the floor. Well, of course, the little owls were just curious to what it was, but they couldn't physically pick it up with their beaks. Every time they went to pick it up, it would just slip out the beak because it was so big and the shell was so tough on him. It didn't work at all. So we just had to do a bit of imagination and put a bit of chick fluff on the top of him. And dyed it black.
At one point, they got some smaller beetles, and they thought they'd had it because these 3 birds were sitting there. And they're really interested in these smaller beetles. So one of them jumped out the tree, and they filmed it going down. Everyone was holding their breath, and it sort of went up, and it picked one up, and it pulled the piece off, and then went to eat it. And as they were filming, it went spat it out. Didn't want to eat it. So that was quite good. And then we had another instance with barn owls. Charlotte had to train 3 barn owls. If you imagine, there's an old shed, and there was like a tea chest, and the tea chest was the barn owl nest. So they had 1 chick in there, which was basically sitting in there. No, actually 2 chicks. 2 chicks sitting in there, and they wanted a picture of an adult barn owl flying in. So the adult barn owl had to fly onto a spade, and then fly up into the tea chest. And in the back of the tea chest, there was a little room, and there was one of us basically sitting there next to a cameraman that was basically filming, had the camera basically in front of the owls, or behind the owl, sorry. Charlotte got the adult barn owl on cue, flew in, landed on the spade where it was supposed to, and fantastic, flew up onto the nest, fantastic, sat on the nest, took one look at the owls in the nest and thought, oh, dinner, and went and grabbed one. So we had to quickly grab hold of it and stop it. But in the sequence, it looks spotless, doesn't it? I mean, the whole thing looked absolutely fantastic. They looked wild. Everything looked wild. And when they're flying. And
this is when you have to take all the kit off, everything, bar the rig. But you take everything off it, and fingers crossed everything goes to plan.
But that, like I say, that lasted for a whole year, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a whole year's worth of work, with these birds, training them, getting them to work, getting them to do stuff that you wanted them, sort of any habits that they have in the wild, and getting them to that. So basically, after that, we watched wildlife programs with a very different thing, because that one was really a con, the whole thing.
Yeah, complete con.
I mean, they had a trained fox, they had trained rabbits, they had, what else did they have? What else they had? All these animals, trained weasel. They had all these animals that were trained, basically, and it all looked wild, when they done it. So
yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of that goes on in a lot of these wildlife shows, from what I've seen anyway, and what I've heard about from secondhand stories and things also. So it sounds kind of like par for course in that regard. Were you still doing shows and stuff during that time along with that?
Yeah, still at the same time running the normal team. At the time, it was just my father and I. My father it is pretty much the same as Sophie and I. He had his team, and Sophie's pretty much taken over his team and has now got new birds on as well. But I've always done the Falcons and the Eagles, and then just kind of watched over the owls and the hawks a little bit more. But we've got a couple of buzzards that we've been trying to fly, and They've been
we got some new stuff we're trying to do, but
challenges.
Thing is, our buzzards they look very much like your red tails, but they're nothing like it. Absolutely nothing like it. I suppose you take a red tail and take 3/4 of the brain away, right? And then that's probably that's a buzzard.
But you can get very much like a Chilean blue. Every now and then you'll get this complete freak one that will work really well and do great displays. But you've probably got to get through 15, 16 birds to try and find that one.
We've been trying to train it the same way as you would train a falcon on a drone. So the problem is it's an imprint bird. So when you try to call it, if you're trying to call it to a hung lure next to you, it just wants to grab hold of you. It doesn't really understand. So that's why we've gone for the polar. So the polar, we can get the lure away from us, swinging in the air, and this thing will chase it in the air. And it's doing pretty good at the moment. We've actually put it on the drone a couple of times, and it's flown up to the drone as well.
But then we've had a couple of days of really bad weather.
Yeah.
And it kind of, you have to go back to the polar to start it all over again.
They are thick. I mean, they're really they're not with it. Yeah. I think that's why everybody here in England was told when you start with a buzzard, because basically
many years ago.
They are hard work. Absolutely. I mean, if you can train that, you can train anything.
Yeah, I've not really heard anybody talk about training that particular species, so that's interesting.
It's not used for hunting, I suppose. It's very much more a display bird, and it's important. I think it's important to try and have a buzzard going because it's a British species, and therefore you can educate the children more on it. And try. I do try hard to have quite a strong British team in the display team. The only downside is, I have to say, the British stuff aren't quite as amicable as some of the warmer climate birds. They're just so much more highly strung. That going from the peregrines we've got in this country to your goshawks, your sparrowhawks, they're not display birds at all because of it. But then you go to even our owls in this country, the tawny owls, the barn owls, the little owls, the snowy owls that we've got in the north of Scotland and things, long-eared and short-eared owls. They're all very nervy birds compared to your African species that are much, much calmer and therefore easier to take into schools. So you kind of end up favouring them at times instead of over what is important is to educate the future on raptors that we've got in this country now.
We've got two peregrines. I mean, Charlotte's flown peregrines basically in display for years. The problem is with the females, you can't do because females are just too predatory. They just, when you start flying them, after a while, that little button clicks, and they just want to go and chase stuff. Whereas thistles are not as inclined if you lure bound them. They're not as inclined. But what happens to thistles is that, and it's happened to pretty much every thistle we've ever had, is that they get to about 4 or 5 years old as they come to basically adult maturity. And then what they want to do is they want to show off. And so what happens is that you'll end up at a show, and Chatsworth, one of the shows that Charlotte does, I mean, you end up with this bird will go up, and it's going up and up and up and up. It's just fantastic. It's, for us Falconers, it's brilliant. You're watching this thing go up, and you're getting really excited. For everybody else in the crowd, it's boring, because it's just going too high. And you'll find one of the last peregrine that we were flying, we've got some youngsters now, but the last one that we actually flew, which went in for breeding, there's a valley, which basically the show ring set in. So there's basically trees either side of it, and there's show rings down the bottom. And this bird would go away, and I'd be watching it, and Charlotte would be talking, and she'd be saying, right, now he's coming back, and he'd start coming back, and she'd whistle him in to basically to stoop. And you'd see him sort of set his wings, and he'd turn around and go away again and get higher and then come back. And he's showing off. He's showing off how high he can get and everything. And it's great, but then the slot that Charlotte had for him would pass. And therefore, she'd have to finish the display, and then she'd have to go out to the car park, and the bird would follow her and go out to the car park, and she'd have to stoop him in the car park, and he might come down sort of 5-10 minutes later, and it would be a phenomenal stoop, but everybody would miss it because basically you've done your allotted time in the arena, and you've got to get out. And so that's what happens when they get to that stage. We then put them in for breeding. So our whole thing here with the birds that we have is the birds fly. Even my hunting birds, they fly. And when they get to that stage in their life, when they're becoming broody, when they want to breed, then we let them breed. If we, as long as we can get rid of the offspring, we don't just breed them for any reason. We allow them to basically breed. We've got the knowledge to be able to breed them. We've got all the incubation stuff and everything. So we just let them breed. And that fulfills, for us, it fulfills their circle of life. You know, they've flown, they've hunted, if they've hunted, and then they've bred.
Nice. Well, I mean, in the midst of all this, then it sounds like, you know, just another element of like organized chaos in you guys' like life, you know. In the midst of juggling all this, then, I mean, how often do you still manage to find time to get out in the field and actually, you know, go hawking?
I basically start hawking around about September, where I basically get the peregrines out. It depends on basically what I've got. At the moment, I've got a 3-year-old female peregrine, which I'm flying, which is one. I think I might have mentioned her in the other one, but she was born with a twisted beak, and she's doing really well. I mean, last year she was not even 2, was it?
Yeah, she'd have just been 2.
She'd just been 2, and she laid eggs. We put her in the male to molt, and not expecting her to do anything, and she laid eggs. They were infertile because the male that we put her with is a very old male, and he's not going to do anything. But then we gave her 2 kestrels to rear, which we bought off a friend, and we put them with her for her to rear them for 2 weeks, and she reared them. You know, she was a great mum, which is like, wow. You know,
they're my display birds.
Yeah, so she's only 2 years old. So we fly her, and then I've got a new one, Diana, which is one of her sisters from this year, one of the birds that we bred this year. So I've kept her back. She's done okay. The only problem with her is that she's so aggressive that she's knocked 3 buzzards out of the sky. And she got grabbed by one of them. Funny enough, she grabbed one of them. When I got to her, they were fighting on the floor. I managed to prise them apart. She went one way, the buzzard went the other. And then when I went to go and get her, I went with my son, and my son said, "Oh, look, Dad, there she is." So I took the lure out, went to lure her in, and about 200 yards away, another buzzard landed in the ground. She took off and nailed that one as well. So she's got this thing about buzzards, but we're slowly retraining her back onto the drone. I mean, she was doing about 400 or 500 foot on the drone.
No buzzards were hurt in this hunt.
So, but she's slowly coming onto it. And then we've got I tried to get the goshawk out. I mean, the goshawk is sort of my bread and butter. I mean, I'll fly the peregrine in the morning, fly the peregrine or in the afternoon, yeah. But the goss, we'll go for a walk with the goss. I mean, where we live, I mean, unfortunately, Jonathan, you never got to come here, but we live in the middle of nowhere. So we are in the middle of the fields. I mean, there's just open fields all around. So, and I have a partridge pen out the back, which we basically put partridges into, and we release grey partridges like Simon does on the ground.
On a smaller scale.
Yeah, much smaller scale. But I mean, this year has been a phenomenal year for partridges breed. So when we got our young partridges this year, which we put into the pen, like happens every year, the wild partridges come in. And this year we had a covey of about 18 wild partridges all around the pen, which is fantastic to see that they bred, you know, and they've done really well last year. So, I mean, the goshawk is the one that I'm mainly for that. And the Harrishawk's a new bird that we picked up at a show. Yeah, there was a lady whose husband had died, and she wanted it to go to a good home, and Charlotte said, "Oh, well, we'll take it." And so that bird, basically, we've only just started flying it really, and basically getting it out. It's already a made hunting bird. So
I train the birds 5 days a week, and Jose hunts them all weekend.
Well, now 4 days, because basically I try to get out on Thursday and Friday as well, on the 2 days that I'm here, and he's just go for a walk. I just put them up and do some training. The only problem is that at the moment, bird flu is a big scare here at the moment. It's got worse. You know, since the last time I spoke to you a year ago, it has got worse. And now, you know, I won't go anywhere near ducks at all. You know, no way will I go. I won't go anywhere near where there are ducks. Yeah. And even with feather, I'm a bit like, you know, we try to basically
unless you know for certain it is a grouse, and it's
Although, I mean, here
the grouse are partridge.
The statistics are showing that the majority of all the birds that have got bird flu are ducks, not any of the other species. They haven't shown any of the other species that basically have it. Peregrines have got bird flu, but the seagulls basically live with waterfowl, don't they? So peregrines have had bird flu, but they've had it because they've been predating on wildfowl, and that's why they've got it. So these other birds at the moment, I haven't seen any, not where we live anyway. Where we live, it's not too bad, but it is becoming a big concern.
I'm having to turn schools away because I know they're in an infected area. And I'm just not even willing to take the vehicle there, let alone anything else. The thought of transporting it back to home, it's just not worth it.
No, I can imagine you being extra paranoid because it's your living. I totally understand. Yeah, the extra precautions for sure. I mean, there's been a lot of mixed kind of views on it here in the States. I mean, some guys are just willing to to take the chance more than others, and teach their own. But I totally get if it's part of your living, put food on the table type of job to make sure that your birds have to stay healthy and do all that. I get it.
I also don't want the worry of the people themselves that are in the infected areas, and it's the worry not being affected but carrying it and then passing it to birds that way.
It's one of those things. I mean, the other thing as well you've got to think about is when we've got a business like this is that, the years that it takes to basically train these birds and get them to do what you want them to do. The guys in America, I can understand basically, flying ducks. And if you don't fly ducks, you don't fly and stuff like that. But if you've got, 3 or 4 Falcons and basically you're flying ducks and they're, 4 or 5 or 6 years old and stuff like that, if one bird gets bird flu, you've had it, all 4 of them are gone. That's it. You might as well basically just, because here, I don't know about America, but here they will kill everything on site. So there's no getting out of it.
I get it. It sounds like a nightmare, and I can't imagine having 60 something birds that you're using, like I said, to hunt with and also make a living with, and having that constant stress. So, like I said, I mean, I get it, and but I mean, like, as far as everything else, though, I mean, how often do you guys actually get a chance to go out in the field together? I mean, do you guys get a chance to at all?
No, we do. Yeah, no, we do. We'll go out together. We've got lots of friends that basically around us. I mean, John Meads, Andrew Ellis, who basically I know his podcast has just come out recently. Mm-hmm. Andy's a great friend of ours. We've been up to Andy's. John Meads, basically, who flies. I think you're going to be speaking to him soon, and he flies 2 golden eagles, a female and a male. So we go out with John on his bit of land, which basically is not far from where we live. So we regularly throughout the season we'll go out quite often. I mean, I'll go out a lot more than Charlotte does because Charlotte's still working. So at weekends she'll still be doing stuff, with the birds, and she'll be doing experience days and stuff like that. Not as much, but she does that. If you like, my falconry fix is this time of year, whereas Charlotte, she's got she's doing it all the time. It's a job, So she'll come out when we're all going out together and stuff like that. She doesn't have a dedicated hunting bird. She flies my birds.
I have for many years, but
she hasn't got the time.
I gave it up about 5 years to have my own bird because I wasn't giving it what it needed, and I couldn't bring myself to keep the bird flying during the week and not be able to give it as much hunting as it deserved.
I mean, the ground we live on as well is particularly for falcons and goshawks. You couldn't fly Harris Hawk well out here, not unless you had land with a lot of hares on it, or rabbits. And there's no rabbits around where we live. Hares, yes, there is hares, but everything else, I mean, because it's so open here, the game gets up pretty fast. Partridges, pheasants, everything gets up and goes. And you've got to have a fast bird to chase it.
There's very little cover.
Yeah,
they're known. Fen pheasants are known as some of the most awkward and most difficult and fast birds of the pheasants across the country. Just because they haven't got the cover, so they've just got to keep going. They
pretty much go horizontally as they take off. They don't go vertically and then go out, which you see most pheasants do. They go up and out. No, these just go, and they're used to it, and they're smaller. They're much smaller. So yeah, we get out quite often, basically, and. Like I said, we've got a good circle of friends here that all fly birds. I mean, during the summer, when I start flying in September, there's 3 of us. So Anthony Ash, Mick Smith, and myself, basically 3 Falcon friends, and we all fly peregrines. And we'll all sort of meet up here, basically, in the afternoons. We'll all phone each other, basically, as we're rushing home from work to try to get here. And obviously, because where I live, I just step out the front door and fly. So they all come here to fly. So we'll all drone together and we'll all basically fly together. And as the season starts and goes, then we'll all basically start to go out together. This year's been a little bit different, because of what's been going on. But it's been, we normally go out quite often. I haven't seen Anthony half as much as I would normally. Anthony flies a Perry Barbary, quite a small little male Perry Barbary, and a pure, I think it's actually a pure female peregrine. And then Mick Smith has got a pure male peregrine, and then he's got a peregrine that I bred this year. So we've got one set of peregrines we've got, which is it's got sort of like, what is it, 132th? No, I can't remember what it is now. It's something ridiculous Barbary. It's got a tiny little bit of Barbary in it, and the rest of it is pure peregrine. And the birds that come out are quite big birds. They've got hardly any Barbary in them at all. I mean, when you look at them on paperwork, you have to put down that they've got Barbary in them. But the females, Mick Smith's got one of the females, which is basically very much, she's one of the sisters to Wonky and the other bird that I've got here, Diana. We have a grouse dinner at the beginning of the year. Which we always, about 20 of us that basically go to that. And then we have an end of year dinner, which we basically have, about 15 to 20 doing that as well.
And guess who cooks?
Yeah, I was really bummed that things worked out the way they did, to where I didn't get a chance to. I mean, I recorded probably, like 15, I think it was like 15 episodes while I was out there, over that week and a half or however long it was. And yeah, but between everything else going on, I was bummed that I didn't get a chance to stop out there. You had promised me this special birthday dinner, and I didn't get a chance to capitalize on it. So hopefully another time. Yeah, no, I'll be back there eventually. But I guess all that being said, it would be kind of nice to talk a little bit too then about the other bit of organized chaos that you take on each year that I got a chance to attend, being kind of the whole game fair atmosphere. And, I'm sure that is a whole other challenge in and of itself, kind of helping organize that and running that whole show. That was quite an ordeal, it looked like. This
year, with the Valley Expo coming on just literally the weekend before it, as you were over for both of them, it did change a lot of the aspects of it. Unfortunately, with one thing and another, I ended up with 4 cancellations the week in between the expo and the game fair. For one reason or another, we ended up with 4 cancellations, which made it very difficult last minute to try and deal with those. It has been growing on year. It's an enormous event, and Falconry's always had a little heart of it. We've always had a very massive an attraction rate there for public and falconers. And I think this year a lot of people wanted to go to the expo and got the experience to go to that, and then to try and get people with the cost of living and everything in this country at the moment, the fuel costs to then travel again to the game fair it really had an effect this year. A lot of people were saying to me, I just physically cannot afford to go to both. I've got to go one to the other. And I think as falconers per se, we want to go to a specialist thing. And I totally get it. We went to the expo. At the last minute, the job I was doing really last minute got cancelled. So fortunately, I got paid for the job. But it meant that we were able to actually go to the expo ourselves and have a look, because having gone to the races and thoroughly enjoyed it over there, watching the Valley races. And the row crow for us as falconers, you go to these displays, and I totally get any other falconer going to a display. It must be boring as hell to watch the person go in and do a bird of prey display. It's like same old. And I totally get it. And at times I can fly my birds and I come home and I'm absolutely bummed because one of the birds has not played game, and host is like, yeah, but those people have never seen it before. And I'm like, yeah, but it didn't fly well. It didn't do what it was meant to do. And host gets at me and says, yeah, but people's perception is not as great as what yours is.
I think Charlotte is too hard on herself. I mean, the general public, basically, that even being in the presence of a bird of prey is enough. That's just, they're in awe of it. That's why they all come and gawp at them at the fair, and that's what we're there for. The game fair is a phenomenal institution, right, for showing off what we do in the countryside, and not only with birds of prey. It's to do with basically shooting, with anything else, and it's
before you go too far. I just want to go back, but for us to go to the Valley races, not this year we couldn't go, but last year we did. We spent the whole of the row crow flying with our mouths on the floor, going, "Did you just see that? Did you just see that?" the guys trying to outwit the Falcons with the row crow at the end to bring it into the arena. It took our breath away, and it was amazing to see something refreshing so out there compared to what we'd been so used to with the displays. So that's what made it, for us, an attraction to go and see the expo, which was obviously earlier in the year.
But yeah,
going back to the game fair.
The expo is for Falconers.
That's what I'm trying to say.
The races is for Falconers.
Yeah.
And Falconers basically appreciate what's going on. The other thing about that is that basically you cannot do that at the game fair. You just can't do it. You
need a special license.
You can't get the license.
Can't get the license.
You cannot fly those road crow above sort of. There's 150,000 people that go to the game fair. You cannot fly the road crow above them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just in case there's an accident. And then what happens is the falconry area has always been basically at one corner, right? Because basically we camp out behind them. We've got all our birds there and everything. People got dogs and all that sort of stuff, so we can camp on site, which is great for that. But then every falconer say, well, we're always out on the limb. So then they say, okay, well, we'll put you more central.
We've pushed
more central. And now then falconers go around and say, yeah, but it's boring. You should fly a road crow. Well, we can't fly a road crow over the top of everybody.
You need an aircraft license.
You can't fly a drone either because of basically health and safety. They go mad if you fly a drone there. So I say to Charlotte, yeah, you're being too hard on yourself. And what the whole falcon and more of the falconers in this country need to understand this, that the game fair is a great way basically to meet all your friends from the falconry world. There'll be falconry equipment there which you can buy. But more importantly, what it is, it's our face to the public. It's our face to the general public of basically showing them what we do, how we do it, and how good we are at what we do. So that basically it puts us on a good footing politically, right, with everybody. And that needs to happen, and more falconers need to understand that, because if they are falconers that go there and go, oh, it's really boring, we did the same thing. It's not for you. It's for everybody else. And what you should do is support it, because that's what we need to do to show. Because at some point, what will happen is we are a minority sport here in the UK. And as probably you are in America, we're a minority sport. And minority sports, as I've heard say plenty of times on these podcasts, they can forget you very, very quickly, right? If you do not stand there and do something good and show how good you are and explain it to people so that when they go away or when the kids are growing up, they remember that day that they went to the fair and they saw the bird or they got near to it. They got told about it. They had a little microscope and looked into a cast and saw the bones and all that sort of stuff. And that's important. That needs to happen. I think more people need to understand that and need to support things like the game fair. To go there and to help as much as possible, rather than sit there and be like, well, we do have some people that just will complain. I mean, falconers complain full stop anyway, but they're just like, they want to complain about everything. They're complaining, and there's a limit to how much you can do in a falconry display, basically, to make it more exciting. You have to try and do new things. But for most of the general public, just even being in there, I mean, I cannot, during the season, you'll go to shows and it'll be like 7 or 8 people deep trying to get a look at the birds, trying to take pictures of the birds. And if I get asked one more time, basically, what does it eat, how old it is, and what is its name, I think I'll lynch myself.
The big question this year is also been, how many feathers does it have? Well, I've never plucked my bird, so I don't know. My answer.
Yeah.
But it's for Charlotte, it's a massive undertaking. I mean, she works on it. When did you start?
We'll be starting the end of February this year again.
Yeah. So end of Feb all the way through until the end of July. And that as to when it takes place.
August. For the game fair.
Yeah, for the game fair.
Oh, no, the game fair. We're already on it now.
Oh, we are. Already started working.
Next week. I've got
so already started looking for people to basically go, exhibitors, basically the demos, the falconry, setting up the falconry area, working out basically times, health and safety, paperwork and stuff like that. The gathering license for birds, which we need to do. She takes on all of that. It's a whole year's job, on off, basically working to that to get to those 3 days when we're there.
Oh, I'm sure. And let's just being real and just being completely, honest with ourselves. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're not ever going to be able to please everybody in any facet of anything. Right. So I like I said, that's why I always have a measure of of respect for people that are willing to take on something that's that large to that degree, and also encompasses so many different things, because not only do you have the Falconers who, yes, we can be a hard bunch to please at times, but also so can, the fishing crowd, so can especially the dog training and the dog breeding crowd, just the other any aspect of hunting or any aspect of anything.
Anywhere you've got passion.
Yeah, exactly. And
everywhere you've got passion is got a problem, and everybody's the first to criticize, and then you turn around to them and say, well, okay, give me some ideas where I can change, but realistic ones, like saying that, can we do the road crow?
Yeah, let's fly a road crow. Let's fly a drone above the 150,000 people, right, and not have it crash and basically then get sued to hell, because they crashed it.
But I spent 2 days looking into it, solid, on the phone, to try and get an insurance on it, and we couldn't get anything. And everyone kept coming back to the fact that we needed an aircraft license. Well, I don't fly a plane. I don't have any license to do that. And I couldn't find a falconer that does have a license that was willing to use the road crow either. And it is just purely because we're on top of the public. There is talk potentially, possibly in the future, of putting us in a field next to it, but then we're not displaying to the public.
You're getting pulled away again.
It's pulling us away again. So
I don't know about in America, Jonathan, but here falconry has become so much more accepted. You can watch adverts on television where you'll see a hawk. Yeah, you can watch television programs where you'll see someone doing falconry, and it's not it's something that's now becoming part and parcel of what we do. There's plenty of adverts on television with birds of prey, and so because it's becoming accepted, it's because over the years, people who have been in the clubs, and I was chairman of the British Hawking Association for 5 years, and Charlotte's dad was of the Central, and with the Hawk Board and the guys that work in the Hawk Board and that, they've worked hard to get this acceptance, to get the general public to accept what we do. And the thing is if you've got that massive acceptance from everybody and everybody sees you in a good light, then when people try to squeeze us, and stop what we do or make it more difficult or stuff like that, then their voices that are going to be added to ours say, well, no, actually, that you shouldn't do that. Because falconry, and all the people that don't do falconry go, oh, no, falconry's okay. We've seen falconry. We've seen what they do. We've seen the birds of prey. We love it, And hopefully, basically, that will help to sway. I'm not going to say it's going to change their minds, but it helped to sway. And the people that basically think that bugger it, I'm just going to go and fly my bird over here in the corner where basically nobody's going to affect me. I'm not going to get involved in any of that sort of thing. I mean, they're ostriches that are sticking their heads in the sand. Basically, it's going to happen. While your head's in the sand, it's going to happen. And then what's going to happen? Then you're going to be doing it illegally. And then once you're doing it, if you're doing it illegally, then you really don't care about your birds, because basically at any given point they're going to be basically taken away from you. So it's one of those things that the falconry community basically needs to stick together and help each other, and stuff like this we could do with people supporting it, as opposed to, we've had a few instances where people have basically sort of moaned and groaned afterwards about it. You shouldn't be moaning and groaning about it. You should be basically supporting it as much as possible.
Nine times out of 10, it's the guys that do the displays that's the forward facing of falconry in front of the public. We're the ones who put our necks on the lines and get the people that are against keeping birds in captivity, in the fact that we feed our birds other animals, and we have to face that day after day at these displays, and we're the ones that are educating them. Now, 90% of those people, I'm honestly, will walk away with the same opinion, because whatever you say to them, they don't want to listen. They've already got their mind fixed. But if you explain to people that come up to your stand and they see the bird sitting in the mews, and they'll turn around and say, oh, aren't they sad? And you then try to explain to them, well, how does an owl look happy? And how does a Harris hawk smile? You then explain to them that, yes, they have been flown. Yes, they've had their exercises. But now they've had their food, they're content. Okay, what would they be doing in the wild? Sitting in a tree now, doing nothing, digesting their food. And then they go away with the positive of it, that what we're doing is a good thing. We are educating people about these birds for kids to see them in the future. I want my son to be able, if he wants to, at the moment, Minecraft and Fortnite and FIFA is far more important. But if he wants to take up falconry in the future, he's got more than enough knowledge to do a talk and a display now. But if he wants to actually take the hunting side up, he's got that knowledge as well. And I want it to be there for him, where if we don't take the forward-fronting arguments and be that face every time we do go to a show and a country fair, and even teachers at schools, don't talk about hunting. Okay, how would you like me to educate your children about what these birds eat in the wild? And the minute you say that, will they eat a mouse? And we had it at the school last week, and we were talking about the barn owl and the circle of life, and with barn owls eating mice in the farms. Okay, so where do you find a barn? And the amount of kids that would say in a city, and then you'd finally get them on a farm, and then they'd say, well, the mice eat cheese. Okay, well, where does cheese come from? And then you have to start down that avenue as well. But those kids will go away now with that little bit more knowledge, and therefore respect the barn owls and respect the wildlife when they are out driving around in the countryside and things. And I think they're the things, and a lot of the teachers as well, because if we don't educate the teachers, they're also not going to be able to educate more children.
I think there's many people that have a perceived idea about what we do in the falconry world, and they, unless it's explained to them, that perceived idea basically sort of just lingers. I mean, you get it in any of these field sports that basically is a little bit sort of like a little bit controversial in the fact that basically they just get this idea and then basically that's it. But until someone sits down and explains it to them, we've had people here. I mean, I'll give you an example. Right? It's a great story. We had a guy who came here who was a professor, very, very high level professor, geologist, right? He used to go on the Antarctic survey and everything. Great guy, really nice guy.
Cambridge University.
And he was at Cambridge University. He came here with his wife, and he said he wanted to learn about birds of prey. It's something he'd always basically wanted to learn about. And we used to do courses. We used to do like a 3-day course and a 4-day course. And a 4-day course, basically, you went out hunting on the 4th day. And we'd take out 2 Harris hawks and we'd take them hunting. So he came to this day, and he said to us right at the beginning, he said, I don't want to hunt.
And his wife.
And his wife don't want to hunt. I just want to learn about birds. I want to learn everything there is to learn about birds of prey. And possibly at some point, I want to own one, right? So he said, but I want to learn about them. So we had him here for the days where we started teaching, doing all the teaching about falconry. We'd gone through all the different types of birds. We're talking about the characters of the birds. We're talking about the food. We talk about preparation of the food. And as we went through these days, he got more and more into it. And he was really, really into everything we were talking about. So then we got into flying the birds basically on the last day in the training. We're taking them all through the training stuff that we do. And on the last day, we went hunting. So we go out on this hunting day, and he was still very unsure, but he wanted to see it because now he'd gone through all of this. The door had been open a little bit, and he was a bit intrigued. So we get him out on this day, and Charlotte and I basically are out with 2 Harris hawks. She's flying one, I'm flying the other. And then as we've gone through the day, we've then given them Harris hawks each for them to carry, basically, and them to fly. Anyway, we're walking along this piece of scrub, and a rabbit bolted out the scrub, and they both let the birds go. The birds were chasing it down this hill, right? And it was a really long slip down hill. They were screaming and shouting, right? Jumping up and down in excitement as the bird was chasing them. They're running down the hill behind the birds. They pretty much got there before the birds did. They got there, and we got there, right, to the birds. The birds had caught the rabbit, and they caught the rabbit together. And the guy stood back, and he went, oh, my God. He went, you've created a monster with both of us. He said, because he couldn't talk because he was so excited, and he'd felt things that he never felt before, and the way that the birds had chased, the excitement, the fact that he wanted it to catch the rabbit, but another he didn't want it to catch the rabbit, but he wanted it to catch the rabbit. He wanted it to be successful. And now he caught the rabbit. He felt this massive euphoria that he'd caught the rabbit. He was very excited. He was so happy. He was hugging his wife and hugging us and everything. And he got really excited about it. And that guy had a female Harris hawk. and he flew his female harriers for years. He's basically took it up to Scotland. He's up there. Yeah. He's moved up to Scotland. He catches crows with this female harrier. It's an absolutely awesome female harrier. But he said that afterwards when he's seen us, he said that, you know, you created a monster. He said, like, I just love it. I love the whole idea of it and the excitement and the primeval thing that it's brought out in me.
Nature on nature. And
nature, yeah, that's exactly what he said. Nature on nature and being in a place where I could see that happening, that struggle that happens every day that we don't necessarily see. And that was great. I mean, it's one of those things that's ever stood with both of us ever since, because there was a guy that, and then at the end of it, loved it.
About 10 years ago, that was.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. And we've had other people basically who've come here since that we've taught and that have made fantastic falconers. They've been great falconers.
We don't make too many monsters.
Yeah, no, that's great though. I mean, yeah, and I think that we as people, you know, as you know, humans as a species, we love to anthropomorphize everything. And, you know, I think that once people, like you said, I mean, that's a perfect example of when people understand that these things aren't, you know, house pets, dogs, cats, or whatever, that there really is a, you know, very primal relationship between the rest of the world that we don't see on a normal basis, then yeah, they get it. But yeah, I mean, as far as everything else goes though, I mean, like I said, I'm really glad that if nothing else that I got a chance to at least check the game fair out, you know, get to, you know, meet you guys in person finally and stuff while I was out there. We're going to go ahead and I want to wrap this discussion up though with just getting you guys' thoughts on if there's any particular thing that you want to, you know, pass on, or any views that you have from your perspective of doing, you know, these shows and then, you know, incorporating both aspects of, you know, the sport and stuff that you've seen, you know, if there's any advice or anything that you want to pass along to anybody else down the line that might hear this later in particular.
I think that, you know, it's a great sport that we all find ourselves in. You know, I've listened to all the podcasts that you've done, and I listened to the guys basically talk about the sport out in America and what you guys have done and what you guys have achieved with the Peregrine Fund. And, you know, that you guys deserve a massive pat on the back, you know, for that. Yeah. I mean, what you guys did with the Peregrines and bringing the Peregrine back from the brink of you know, being just gone. You know, absolutely gone, you know, and not being a single peregrine there, to what you have now of healthy peregrine, you know, numbers in America is phenomenal. And I think that camaraderie that you guys have over there of that you have between interclubs and the contact with nature. It seems that basically in America, I don't know, I could be wrong. I mean, I'm listening to a lot of guys basically live in rural areas out in America, but the contact that you have with wildlife and with animals basically in America is something that's lost to people here in the UK. I think in Europe, a lot of people have a very close connection to the countryside and animals and wildlife and, you know, everything to do with the countryside. And in the UK, we most of us live in cities, or most people live in cities. So they have a really, they're not close to any wildlife, countryside, nothing. And it seems that you guys, from everybody that I hear, you know, still have that contact, you know, with wildlife, you know, and that's great. That's admirable, you know. And I would hope that people basically hear, that people would, especially with the Falconry fraternity, that they look towards basically supporting what we do, that more people here in the falconry world accept the fact that basically, you know, display teams and people that go out and do displays are doing a job for you, as well as basically earning a living. They're doing a job for you. They're making you look good, you know, so that you can continue your sport and be able to do your sport, because without them, it wouldn't happen. Very soon, the minority would basically go off into a corner somewhere where somebody would go, nah, don't need that anymore, gone. Yeah, so that's my point of view. I don't know.
As a display team, we have to have a new license that's come out 5-6 years ago now, and even with that now, we lost a lot of people and good falconers that were doing it at the time. Just turned around and said that, look, there's too many changes. It's not something I want to look at, and they actually gave it up. because of it, for doing the displays. But now we have to have this license that we're going to have to adapt to. And we can fight until we're blue in the face, but we're such a minority, I can't see a lot of them changing because of it. So we're going to have to adapt to it and looking at ways to adapt to it so that we can carry on being a face. But instead, we just get knocked down time and time again, sadly, by the falconers, by the guys that do go out or hate to say it, I think the guys that listen to these podcasts in particular are people that do have a passion. But the people that are on social media, and I call them
armchair falconers,
are guys, men and women, that have a Harris hawk or a peregrine in their back garden, and they may go and fly it out once or twice a month. They're the ones that want to criticise us all the time.
And they want to give everybody advice on how to do everything else. And even though they've never done it before.
And don't have the experience. And all I'm trying to say is give us a bit of a break for the display to people. We have to work all year round to keep our birds fit and healthy. Okay, you're hunting guys. You get them out at the towards the end of the year. As the host gets his out at the end of August, ready for the beginning of September, and he goes through the winter with it. Bird food, avian influenza being as it is, obviously things are changing more and more with the seasons. But for us, we are flying our birds all year, and we are putting a face on all the time. Yes, we're there for education, and yes, at times it is entertainment. But if you don't do it through entertainment, people don't want to listen.
And Charlotte goes out. I mean, one of the things that she loves doing more than anything else is the schools and the kids. And she's doing a job basically out in these schools and kids at a very young age, giving them an impression on basically falconry and what birds of prey are that is hopefully going to last them a lifetime and think something they're going to remember. Does come to them and we get to adults, they're going to have an interest in falconry, have an interest in basically birds of prey, or even basically when it comes to someone wanting to ban birds of prey, they're going to go, no, actually, no, I know about that. And I remember the lady that came and basically spoke about it. So
the shows that I've seen, especially when I've made my treks through like Eastern Europe and, getting to see, some of these bird display shows they have at, some of these different castles and things like that, and getting to meet, the people that are part of these shows that also, like to hunt hares with their golden eagles or whatever, the case might be or whatever. I mean, I think it's an important part of, like you said, just the outreach and the PR aspect of things for sure. Because, like you said, you brought up a good point, Charlotte, in that if it's not put out there in kind of an entertaining visual to latch onto anymore, it's really hard to get people's attention. And I totally get that. But yeah, I mean, as far as, if people want to check out your show that haven't seen it yet or check out, the different things that you do, go ahead and plug your show and your businesses and things real quick so people can check out the stuff if they want to.
Well, the website is www.cjsbirdsofprey.co.uk. We've got the website on there where we do a new thing that's come to us really in the last 3 or 4 years is weddings, where people, particularly fathers, are very good at this, of the bride and the groom. They want us there to stop people from drinking. So we're the entertainment in between the wedding over here and the photos. So instead of people drinking alcohol or getting absolutely wasted before they actually go in for the food for the breakfast, lunch, we do weddings, we do corporate work, many different corporate works in all different ways, TV work, schools,
demos.
Demos.
Anything that needs a bird of prey.
Yeah, pretty much. It's what it's there. If genuinely, if I could spend the rest of my life going 5 days a week to schools, I would. That would be my absolute dream, ultimate thing to do, just to educate children to true facts about the birds, and not getting put into a narrow-minded person's point of view.
Understand. Well, I mean, do you guys have any final last thoughts then before we end? Like I said, I'm going to have to go and hunt my new red tail that I just gotten ready to free fly and stuff here before too long. So,
well, I just want to say basically, I love the podcast. Right? I mean, I bore Charlotte basically with them, listen to them in the car.
No,
we go on long journeys. I absolutely love them. I mean, I love the people that you've got on there, the mix of people that you've got on there. I mean, you've got quite a lot of my good friends on there, and some people from abroad that you've had as well. And I think it's great. It's admirable what you're doing. It's a great service to falconry. You know, you guys are doing a massive service to falconry, and the more people we can get, non-falconers that basically would listen to the podcast and learn something. In all of the stuff that you do, I don't think there's one podcast I've listened to that I haven't learned something or that I haven't
off before
really.
The end.
No, I've really enjoyed all of them. I mean, it really is. I can't say enough. I mean, I wish we had a British podcast that basically does what you do here in the UK and would take advantage more of basically the amount of falconry people that we have here in the UK. You know, like you did an interview with the guy through the Eagle, Ronnie Moore. Incredible, right? Ronnie Moore is a fantastic falconer, and a wealth of knowledge, right? And a great eagle falconer, and just listen to him tell those little stories about basically things that he'd done. Fantastic, absolutely brilliant. So well done, really well done.
I can't take my hat off enough to what you've done, and in my heart of hearts, I kind of wish it happened 30, 40 years ago where the falconers that we've lost. Very much recently. A lot of the really big named guys, particularly in the UK.
Yeah, Stephen Franks. I mean, like Roger Upton. Would have made fantastic. Jim Chick.
It's just
all
the
those
stories
guys
that we've lost, which is heart wrenching. Not only lost the guys themselves, but they lost their stories and their passions and their experiences that. They had when the game was much more abundant in this country, and it was elitist in some ways, but there's still their stories are still amazing to listen to.
We've had the pleasure of basically having a few drinks over a campfire, right, sitting there until the early hours of the morning, listening to stories that would blow any falconer away. When you're listening to them, and they would have been brilliant on this sort of stuff.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's something that I've mentioned before, to many people, is that that's the only regret that I have in doing a lot of these things is that, it's their right, but I mean, there's some guys that just choose not to do that. And then it's understandable. I mean, it's not for everybody, but at the same time, like you said, you wish that this technology and the people who are willing to undertake the labor of love, so to speak, were around decades ago, because yes, I totally agree. I mean, having all these written works, books that you can read and stuff, that's one thing. But actually hearing somebody's voice and hearing the inflections, hearing, the passion or the emotion, I guess I should say, in some of these people's voices as they're telling these things and discussing some of these favorite memories of theirs. I mean, it's priceless. And I'm thank you very much for the kind words and for taking part and for also, being willing to try and help me out at the game fair and stuff. Sorry about the technical difficulties and everything again with all that other crap. And, it is what it is as far as,
if you come over again, I mean, please do come and visit us, right? And we can do another one if you want, or basically we've got friends that we can do actually, instead of doing a double one, you could have a load of friends sitting around together, right, and do one where you interview like 3 or 4 people at once, and they all come in with stories. Because I'll tell you what, our dinners, when we sit here and we basically have the end and the beginning of the season dinners, the stories that come out then, I mean, that is priceless. Absolutely priceless.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I've had some friends, be like, "Oh, you guys should do like an After Dark episode or whatever, or whatever," and I'm just like, "Oh, you can't
put that many bleeps in it."
Yeah, that might be a little risque, but at any rate, like I said, thank you guys again so much for being on here, and like I said, I'm always appreciative of anybody's time, and I know you guys always have a lot of stuff going on, and I mean, I'll be over there again at some point. It's just a matter of when, and of course, the the always ever.
There'll be a dinner here. I'll offer that, even though I won't cook it.
Well, like I said, I appreciate it, and go ahead and hang on here after I hit stop here. But yeah, thank you again, and like I said, I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.
All right.